Hello, and welcome to this series of videos that's going to be focusing on the Unity UI, or the user interface. At the core of the Unity UI is the Canvas game object. Before we even jump into the technical details of the Canvas game object, let me give you an example. Picture an artist, and that artist is staring at a blank white canvas, and he has a color palette that he's about to color onto the canvas. The color palette represents the various UI elements that he's going to be applying to the canvas. Examples of UI elements include text, images, other types of graphics, and video. A great resource that you can use throughout this Unity series and your courses is the Unity documentation online. It's filled with resources and examples to hopefully give you a better understanding of these complex elements. Let me quickly show you the Unity documentation, which can be found by going to docs.unity3d.com/manual, and here you'll be taken to the latest version of the Unity documentation, which at the time of this video is the Unity 2019.4 LTS, or long-term stable version. From this home page, you can take a look on the left-hand side, the various options, and we're currently going to be interested in the user interfaces. So go ahead and click on that, and here select Unity UI. And from here, this is going to cover the canvas, which is what we're going to be talking about in this video. And this will give you a little bit more information about the canvas and what it is, how to create it, as well as the draw order of elements, which is going to be a little bit more applicable when we get into our next tutorial talking about text and images. We have various render modes that we'll be talking about, and let's go ahead and actually see this in action. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and go back to Unity, and let's go ahead and just create one now. So let's go ahead and go to the upper left hand corner of Unity. Up here we see the game object drop down menu. Select that, locate UI in the middle, and from here select Canvas, the fourth from the bottom. When you create the Canvas game object, it's going to create two things. First is the Canvas game object itself. The second is the event system. For the purposes of this video, we're not going to talk about the event system in detail, but the event system is used to handle user input, such as button clicks. If you ever run into a scenario where you have your UI set up, but your buttons are not responding to any clicks, the first thing to do is make sure that you have an event system inside your hierarchy. It's very common to have that accidentally be deleted. Okay, going back to the canvas though, we noticed some changes in the scene view, and let's briefly talk about those. So, the scene view we know shows the contents of what is going to be in our scene. We see this white box here, which represents the bounds of our main camera. So what we actually want the end user to see in the game view needs to be contained within the bounds of this camera. But when we created the canvas, I'm going to go ahead and delete my canvas. Please leave your canvas in the Unity hierarchy. You'll notice that that other box went away. Let me go ahead and re-add my canvas so you can see it appear. Okay, so what is this bigger box? Well, let's go ahead and zoom out with your scroll wheel. And it's actually quite big, so it's a ways out here. Hold down the middle mouse button. Go ahead and drag it to the center for me. And here what we're looking at is actually the canvas itself. Now Unity does this in the screen space overlay. We'll talk about that in just a second. But this is really good for a separation of concerns. What we mean by separation of concerns is in the very small rectangle down here in the left-hand bottom corner, this is where your actual contents of the scene are going to go, your actual game objects. This larger box up here, this is what you want to be overlaid on top of the content that is in this smaller scene here. So anything you want, like health bars or an action bar or a character profile or mini map, those type of things are going to go up here, whereas your actual character, the game objects they encounter, enemies and such, those are all going to be down in this smaller box. And if you follow along in this series of videos, that'll make a little bit more sense as we actually get into some content creation. Okay, let me talk about the properties of the canvas a little bit. With the canvas selected in the hierarchy on the left, you'll notice that the values or information is going to be populated in the inspector on the right hand side. One of the most important properties here is the canvas scaler. So the canvas scaler is going to dictate how the canvas is going to scale on multiple display resolutions. So as you're developing your projects, one thing that we want to be aware of is we want to make sure that all of the UI elements that we create stay within the bounds of the camera and the display that we're trying to display them on. The constant pixel size, as its name implies, is if you have a UI element, for example an image, and you have constant pixel size checked here in Canvas Scaler, irrespective if it's on a 2K, a 4K, or an 800 by 600 resolution, it's going to remain the exact same size. For example, if we have a 100 by 100 pixel image, on the 800 by 600 it will still be 100 by 100, and that's going to be pretty big on that display. But if we take that 100 by 100 image and go to a 4K resolution, well, that's going to be very, very small in that resolution. That's that constant pixel size. Typically you're not going to want this. Typically you're going to want the second option available in the Canvas Scaler, which is the Scale with Screen Size. The Scale with Screen Size, as the name implies, is going to take the canvas and make sure that all of the UI elements inside of it are going to appropriately scale with the display resolution that you are trying to view the end product on. So, aka what we mean by that is whatever we put on the UI, irrespective if we're on a 2K or a 4K monitor, we want to make sure that everything's in the same position and is roughly the same size so that it displays nicely across all types of different screens. Another important thing that I like to recommend that people do right away up front is to set your aspect ratio. Now, this is going to be very helpful for viewing your application in different resolutions. If you click the Free Aspect drop-down in the Game View tab, you can view a set of common resolutions that Unity provides. It has a standard 1K monitor here. Let me go ahead and add a 2K resolution. So if I were to type in 2K to this name slot, and let's go ahead and add a width of 1920 by 1080p, so a standard 1080p resolution. We'll go ahead and click OK. You'll notice that that 2K resolution is now going to be an option that I can select in the future. If you wanted to do a 4K resolution or even an 8K resolution, you could make those changes by clicking the little plus and setting those values here. It's very important throughout the development cycle that you're constantly testing your UI on different resolutions just to make sure you didn't miss anything, things are scaling appropriately and look how they should, and just make sure that in the game view, how it is presented in the game view is how your end users are actually going to see the product. The next important thing is to make sure that you set the reference resolution here to the value that you are developing with. So what I like to do when I'm developing is typically I will leave this at Free Aspect, the reference resolution, where the standard resolution that I believe most people are going to be developing towards is the 1920 by 1080p resolution. Now this is going to be the reference resolution that the UI layout is going to be designed for initially, but because we have scale with screen size, this is going to allow all of our things to scale appropriately when the UI is scaled up or when the UI is scaled down. Now we have this screen match mode here, and we'll get into a little bit more of this in our image tutorial, but what this is essentially saying is how do you want the UI to respond when it's rescaled. So for example, right now we're viewing this in a free aspect. When we are moving the game view or the scene view around, that is essentially resizing what the actual person is going to be seeing. We want to match that based on the width or the height. Now typically, for the development of these courses, just leave it at the width first and then the height. That'll be common enough. You can put it right in the middle where it will give each an equal priority or you can do the height as the maximum priority. Essentially, what this means is when you move it to a different display, it's going to match the width first, and then it will match the height. Okay, I believe that's everything that we're going to cover for this first tutorial. If a lot of this didn't make sense, don't worry too much about it right now. We're only talking about the very high-level overview of the canvas. What I want you to take away from this video is the canvas is the parent game object that we're going to be adding UI elements, user interface elements, to, and these consist of text, images, other types of graphics, and video. And the second most important thing is, when you are creating the canvas, go ahead and set up your canvas scaler first. We did that when we selected on the canvas and set up the UI, scale with screen size, and put our reference resolution of a 2K resolution here. Those are the most important things to do right when you're setting up your canvas. In the next few tutorials, we're going to be covering adding text, images, other types of graphics, and videos. So please take a look at those videos. If you have any questions or concerns, please leave a comment in the comment section or reach out and ask your instructor. Thank you very much.